lifestyle? Were you sitting out next to the cement pond with the BMW parked in the driveway? No, you weren't.
I will sentence Mr. Williams to 20 years to serve.
Drug lords are some of the biggest criminal minds our world has known. They're found all over the world and have several cunning methods of executing their businesses. But even masterminds like those cannot remain undefeated by law. Today, we're about to take you through a list of 3 drug lords proved guilty and their reaction to their conviction. Like and subscribe if you don't want this innocent dad to get a life sentence. 3. William Williams. The man who was once the kingpin of a vast empire that stretched across many states succeeded gloriously as a drug lord. But that success once came to an end too. William Williams boasted immense power and wealth, commanding millions of dollars, hundreds of associates, and an innumerable amount of customers. Power and fame like that can very easily get to your head, and so did it in this case. Williams, enjoying the benefits of being an immensely successful drug lord, began to consider himself immense and immortal, which is what ultimately led to his downfall. He took light of the power of law and persistence. Pride goes before a fall, and William Williams was no exception to that. William was born in the year 1970 in Macon, Georgia. His rough upbringing could have definitely played a part in him choosing unlawful means of success. He grew up in a very poverty-stricken and violent neighborhood. In this little town, one would find drugs and gangs around every corner of the street, as if it wasn't even illegal to be dealing drugs. On observing the powers one could possess through drugs and businesses of that sort, William sought a path different from the average school-going boys. He dropped out of school very early to begin selling drugs on the streets, and before he knew it, his cunningness and intelligence had him quickly earning a reputation as a shrewd and ruthless dealer. At a very fragile and young age, he became more and more popular as a drug lord who wouldn't hesitate to apply means of violence to safeguard his territory. Around the time of the late 1990s, his empire was known to involve cocaine too, which he sourced from suppliers in Mexico and Florida. He crafted a whole network of associates and distributors who were in charge of selling his product across the region, with plans to expand further into Washington, D.C. and New York City. The man had minions doing his job everywhere. To escape the consequences of law enforcement, he made sure all his communication was done through burner phones, encrypted messages, and code words. This way, neither him nor his partners could get caught in the political web. His encrypted communication with partners, along with multiple aliases and vehicles, concealed his identity for a very long time. As a drug lord, he lived an extravagant life. His lavish lifestyle had him owning a bunch of luxury cars, jewelry, several casinos, nightclubs, and even strip clubs. He sure did not like to lay low and loved flaunting his wealth and power. However, his life was just too good to be true, and he ran out of luck on fateful day in March 2020. As we all know, there is never a perfect crime. Authorities seized a massive shipment of cocaine which somehow traced back to him, and his empire was now finally at the hands of the law. Followed by this, there was a detailed and very complicated investigation that was conducted. It involved wiretaps and surveillance, and other methods of the sort which not only landed him in trouble, but also resulted in the arrest of more than a dozen suspected dealers linked to his network.
Convicted because you're guilty. That's the plain and simple truth of it. The evidence would show that, the wiretaps show that, and at the end of it all, I find that I would say you should be sentenced for your involvement, your participation in this racketeering enterprise.
With sufficient evidence and a long trialing process, he was found guilty of 3 racketeering charges in November 2021 and was punished with a sentence of 40 years in prison, with 20 years to serve consecutively.
I will sentence Mr. Williams to 20 years to serve. Count 2, I will sentence him to 20 years. That will be consecutive to count 1, and I'm going to require that be served. 20 years to serve. Count 3 already indicated that is merged with count 1. So
you'd think that the drastic change from living a glamorous life to being locked behind bars would give the guy a heart attack, but the once powerful kingpin remained stoic, showing no emotion as his fate was sealed by the judges of the court. 2. Wallace Bigger. Wallace Bigger was very easily the stereotypical definition of a typical drug kingpin. We're all so familiar with drug lords living life like princesses. riding in style in their enormous cars, living in mansions, and wearing the fanciest clothes. Wallace Bigger was nothing like that.
Live a big lifestyle where you're sitting out next to the cement pond with the BMW parked in the driveway? No, you weren't. You lived a pretty crummy lifestyle, time to time, in a camper in your daughter's front driveway, but it didn't stop you from being manipulative. It didn't stop you from abusing other people.
He spent his days in a humble trailer, camper, or an apartment above a pizza store in the small town of Mansalona, Antrim County, nothing too fancy. He lived a life you'd expect a drug kingpin to live. Even though he had a face that surely did not look like that of a criminal, he was the ultimate criminal indeed. Yes, the mastermind behind an enormous and massive drug operation that flooded northern Michigan with thousands and thousands of pills. The whole operation he was under was with the assistance of a doctor in Saginaw, who prescribed him large quantities of morphine and dilaudid pills. Yes, the one who fueled his empire the most was in fact a medical physician himself. The doctor also sold him powerful opioids used to treat severe pain, which obviously had several other effects. Bigger would make a trip to this doctor every month to restock his pills and then very meticulously sell them in Mansalona for $10 to $20 each. Bigger got away with this illegal operation for as long as 2011 to 2013, which in turn led to the opioid epidemic in the region. Later in the year 2014, a multi-agency task force called the Traverse Narcotics Team, TNT, launched a detailed investigation into Bigger's ventures. With the brilliance of agents, discreet informants, wiretaps, surveillance cameras, and search warrants, the investigation successfully led to the arrest and indictment of Bigger and several others on various charges related to drug trafficking and conspiracy. Coming to what we're actually here for, at his trial in August 2020, Bigger surprisingly pleaded not guilty. He claimed that he was being framed by the police and prosecutors as an innocent man. However, the jury had more than enough evidence to prove him guilty on all counts after interrogating for less than 2 hours. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 360 to 480 months in prison, accompanied by an order to forfeit $20,000 in cash while being investigated. However, Bigger is definitely one to maintain his composure, as he showed absolutely no remorse or even empathy for his victims. He only kept blaming others for his predicament. 1. Joaquin Chapo Guzman. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was born on April 4, 1957, to parents Emilio Guzman and Maria Consuelo Loretta Perez. He was raised in La Tuna, a very small rural area in Sinaloa, Mexico. In spite of having a very ordinary upbringing, El Chapo became one of the most notorious and feared drug lords in the history of drug dealing. He became the leader of the renowned and powerful Sinaloa Cartel, responsible not only for drug trading, but also for hundreds and thousands of deaths. Guzman's father, being very ordinary in accomplishments, found it really difficult to be the breadwinner of the family through ordinary means. When the struggle became too much at a point, he ended up seeking the unlawful path. El Chapo grew up watching his father sell and smuggle drugs. His father's involvement in drug trade definitely had something to do with the path that El Chapo would choose later on in his life. He was done and out of school as early as by the 3rd grade and began working with his father. These aren't some wholesome father-son activities they did together. They were in fact cultivating marijuana and learning the ins and outs of smuggling drugs into the United States. So it's fair to say his criminal career started at an age a lot earlier than most criminals. Once he took charge of things himself, he quickly rose through the ranks with his brilliance and notorious nature. He joined forces with his uncle Pedro Aviles Perez, who was also a pretty famous pioneer in Mexican drug trafficking. After the passing away of Pedro, El Chapo joined hands with Hector Luis Palma Salazar, forming the Guadalajara Cartel. The cartel went on for quite some time before it broke up in 1989. It was from then on that El Chapo emerged as the leader of the Sinaloa faction. He was very creative when it came to expanding his methods, and did so using tunnels, planes, trains, and even boats to smuggle drugs. He may have been a cruel, evil man, but he sure did have some reputation as a good man among the people of Mexico as well, and was given the title the Robin Hood of Mexico. Nevertheless, it was the same fame that led to his capture not once but multiple times. He even broke out of prison in 2001 by hiding in a laundry cart and evaded authorities for 13 years. When he was finally captured for good in 2016, he was extradited to the United States. He was then trialed and was found guilty. His punishment included life imprisonment along with another 30 years and was ordered to forfeit billions of dollars in assets. He showed a very remorseful reaction at court. He seemed to have more guilt than anger, considering his tears at the sentencing.
His face says it all. The most powerful drug lord ever to live, reduced to tears in the hands of U.S. federal agents.
His reaction definitely showed the weight of his actions. As of now, he is currently serving his sentence at ADX Florence, which is known to be one of the most secure prisons in the world. What do you think about their reactions? Let us know in the comments below. Ever seen a reaction of innocent convicts freeing? Here, 7 emotional reactions of innocent convicts freeing that will melt your heart.